Welcome to our Destination Rural podcast series. We're well into series 3 now, so thank you for continuing to listen and your support of our podcast series. I'm Peter Rutherford. I'm the CEO of the Rural Doctors Association of Australia. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Clark Wasiun from Albany in WA. Before we start, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of the traditional custodians of the lands on where we meet and for where the listeners may be living. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and thank any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that may be joining us for this podcast episode. Thank you, Clark, for joining us on our Destination Rural podcast. Much appreciated. And I know you've just come out of theatre, so it's obviously been a busy day and still got more important jobs to get done. So thank you.
Thank you.
So just a little bit about yourself, where you work. You're a GP anaesthetist or rural generalist anaesthetist and also a practice owner. So just a little bit of background and where you're currently working, what you like about the job, maybe what you don't like about the job, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a GP anaesthetist. I'm currently working in Albany in the Great Southern, and so I spend my week basically doing about a 50-50 role in general practice and anaesthetics. And the general practice role also includes nursing homes and the hospice, and we also, and the anaesthetics side of things is at the public and the private hospital. And I've been doing that for about 18 years now. And I've been thoroughly enjoying it down here in Albany.
Are you a rural kid or did you grow up in the city? Like, where did you grow up?
I was born in Kalgoorlie, so definitely a rural kid, and left Kalgoorlie when I left high school to do medicine. I actually did a year of science at first because my marks weren't good enough to get into medicine. So, but I did learn to work hard at doing science at uni, and after an interview, after my first year of science, I managed to get through into medicine.
And did you always want to be a GP, or what led you to general practice?
I certainly always wanted to be a doctor. I remember I was probably the only one in primary school who knew what I wanted to do. And I don't think I really knew back then what part of medicine I wanted to do, but I quickly figured out that general practice was what I wanted to do. I wanted a bit of diversity and a bit of a mix, and not knowing what was coming through the door next, I think, was really what I wanted.
And has it delivered that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I think being rural has helped deliver that. You really don't know what's coming through the door, which is great. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do lots of different things in general practice, whether it be removing skin lesions or doing medicals or like I said before, doing a bit of work at the hospice and a bit of work in nursing homes. So yeah, it's definitely delivered that.
Nice. And I mean, I hear lots of great things about Albany and living in Albany. I've never been to Albany, so it's on the bucket list. But what about your family? Like, is your wife, whose birthday's obviously coming up, because that's the important job this afternoon,
Yeah.
to buy the present. But what about your family? Have you got kids, and are they going to school locally, or if you do have kids? So yeah.
Yeah, so I have three children, aged. This is putting me on the spot. 16, 14, and 8. And my wife is. She originally worked in the Department of Industry and Resources, and then when we had kids, she did a degree in psychology. So she's now doing psychology. And they go to the local public school, which is just across the road, which is handy. And yeah, they love it down here.
And what are they hoping to do? Like, do they know what they want to do? Are they looking to do uni down the track, or or just work, or just sponge off dad forever?
Yeah, well, I do wonder if that's going to happen sometimes. But no, look, my son, he wants to be a rock star, and when he first said that, I thought, oh yeah, of course you do, but he does. He's pretty keen, and he loves his guitar. And like the typical dad, I think he's pretty good at it. So, I'm all for it. So he's giving that a real go. And my two daughters, obviously the 8-year-old's not really sure yet, but and the 14-year-old, I don't think she really knows. I don't think she really has thought about it, to be honest.
What would you say, like, to people who, like with like kids of school age, both at, primary school and high school, about, the education standards? Because I mean, a lot of people sort of say, oh, I can't go rural, my kids are too young, I'll wait till they finish school, or, there's always sort of something. But what would you say about the standard of education in these communities? And like for your son, he obviously has a particular interest in music. Have you been able to accommodate that interest and, nurture that interest locally, or have you had to look elsewhere type thing?
Oh, look, we've been really fortunate here because there's not really any music talent in the family where he's got it from. So he's just was chosen through the school to do music, and that was just sheer luck, really. And but our school has his school has an excellent music program, and he's been able to take it from there. So I've got nothing but good things to say about the education that my kids have received here. And I agree with you. I think there is a bit of a concern amongst some people who, in terms of where their kids are going to be educated and what they're going to do when they get to high school. But look, I think the education system here is fantastic, and I think every school has its pluses and minuses. But I'm very, very happy with ours at the moment. Yeah.
And was like, because you mentioned your wife, when you had kids, she studied psychology, so she was able to do that in Albany.
That's right. So she could do it through, or do it online and do most of her pracs online. But some of it was a trip to Perth, but it was not very often. We were fortunate enough to be able to do that while I was working and while the kids were sort of growing up.
Yeah. And do you own your practice, or are you a partner in your practice?
So look, I was a partner in a practice for, I think it was about 12 years. Up until fairly recently. So at the moment, I'm not a partner. I'm just enjoying the clinical work at the moment. So that's been a nice change.
Yeah. Because again, that's something that seems to be, particularly with younger doctors looking at, going rural, that it's not something they're necessarily interested in. Do you think there are benefits to being one of the practice partners or practice principals, or, it's something that's become, almost an increasing burden, I guess? Are there positives and negatives, or do you think there's more positives? It's just, I guess, a changing dynamic within the medical workforce. So what would your, sort of thoughts to people considering buying into a practice?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. There are positives and negatives, definitely. I mean, I think it's nice to have a bit of a say in the running of the practice, and that way you can guide or help guide the principles of the practice, the ethics, the culture of the practice, and that's really, I think that's really important. And it can be very rewarding as well. So it's just nice to be able to put forward your opinion and make a difference. I guess the downside is it is a bit of extra work, and a bit of after hours work and meetings and things like that. There's a bit more responsibility, obviously, as well. I mean, there's a financial responsibility, but there can be financial rewards. So look, it's something, I think, having been in that situation and been in both situations, I think it's something that you would, if you were offered that or the opportunity arose, I think you should at least look into it. And you wouldn't jump straight in and say yes, but you would definitely look into it because it has some benefits.
Yeah. WA seems so far away from Canberra, but what do you think, like in WA? Because I hear some really good stories about some of the teams, particularly in rural, that get established, and the work from the rural clinical school always seems to have positive, I'll say talk, or it's all about the vibe, but a really positive sort of culture is probably the word I'm looking for. But what's your take on the current situation with medical students and junior doctors and that coming through into particularly rural generalist practice and rural general practice?
I think things have progressed even in the last year or two. I think there's been a real uptake of rural generalism in particular in WA, and I think people are beginning to realise that working rural has a lot of rewards, and particularly a lot of work-related rewards, as well as just working rural or living rurally and having the rewards of living in a great town and having the great weather like we do in Albany, and a great beach to work to live next to, and all the other benefits that we have. So I think there's been a real improvement and uptake in the last couple of years, and that follows down the line through the junior doctors and the medical students as well, because they can get that teaching in these areas as well.
How do you access like upskilling for your anaesthetics, or are you getting plenty of anaesthetics with support locally? But what to maintain your anaesthetic skills, like what would you do to maintain those skills?
We're fortunate that we do get a lot of exposure to anaesthetics and have the support, because we do a fair bit of high risk anaesthetics, but we have the support, which is great. But it's always useful to get some upskilling. It's always good to see how some of the other guys are doing it, and just keep up to speed with different methods, even if it's learning different methods you don't want to do. So we've got that opportunity to go to, obviously to go to Perth, but also to go to Bunbury. And that's becoming easier. I think that there have been changes to improve the paperwork burden in doing this, and that's made a difference as well. It doesn't take you months and months to get through the process anymore, which is really, really good. So it's not a difficult or onerous thing to organise a few days at Bunbury or Perth.
Yeah, and you're on the RDAA board, and you're also the current president of RDA WA. Do you do teaching as well, like for the university or for supervising for the college? And how important is it to have those other, interests, even though they're still within medicine, but in addition to your clinical load, or is it more of a burden?
I wouldn't call it a burden. It's just sometimes tricky to fit it in, I guess. That's it, because I love it. And so I'm an ACRM accredited trainee and trainer, if you like. And I do supervise an ACRM registrar currently. And I really enjoy it. That's got some it's very rewarding to do that. And the tricky thing is just trying to squeeze in amongst the anaesthetics doing that, but it's not impossible.
Okay. I'm going to fire some quick questions at you, and you can just, first thing that pops into your mind.
All right.
I am making some assumptions with the questions I'm asking, so bear with me. Dockers or Eagles?
Eagles.
Oh, good choice. Should WA separate from the rest of the country?
No.
Oh, controversial.
No.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Gee whiz, that's a tricky one.
We'll come back to it.
Perhaps,
okay.
I'll give you an answer in terms of clinical work. I'll say, when in doubt, say yes, and then think about it.
Okay, nice. How important are mentors to rural doctors and having a network, a support network? Because often we hear about people talking about, if you go rural, you're isolated. How important is it to maintain sort of not just a professional network, but a social network?
Look, I think it's very important. I think you do need to have a network of sorts. We're pretty fortunate here. We've got a really good professional network, and I tend to try and keep that separate to my social network. I see my fellow clinicians quite a bit at work anyway, so I like to have sort of talk to people who don't know anything about medicine or don't want to hear about medicine. So, but you definitely need both supports. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's something that about you that not many people know?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that in my head.
Well, I'm going to let you go, but thank you for joining us on our Destination Rural podcast series. As I said, it's fairly quick, it's fairly painless, but really appreciate your time.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
And good luck buying your wife's birthday present.
Yep, thank you.